Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Newton. Nice
How are
to
you?
meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you accepted my invite. May I ask you to please tell us your name?
Yeah, so it's Dr. Mira Brancu.
Beautiful. And Brancu, what did I say it correctly? Say it one more time.
Brancu.
Brancu. Okay,
Yeah,
I got it. I think I
a
got it.
little bit difficult.
Yes. Um, what is the origin of your name?
Romanian.
Oh,
Yeah, and probably has been changed a couple of times from the
God.
original, as you can imagine with immigrant status. Probably has been changed quite a number of times, so that it before that it was pronounced Brâncu in Romanian, and then before that it was changed from something completely different.
Well, it's a beautiful name. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
May I ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself? Anything you feel comfortable sharing? Anything about yourself, you want to share with us? You're okay with the whole world knowing.
Sure, yeah. And you and I connected right before this video about how important it is for young people today, actually really of any age, to understand that they're not alone in their sort of struggles to find themselves in their careers and be noticed and seen for who they are and their strengths. And certainly we all have our stories about that. So I'd be happy to share my story about that as well, in hopes that it could help support others. So for me, I mentioned I'm an immigrant. My family and I came here to America when I was 6 years old. We were political refugees. We immigrated from a country that was communist and a fascist dictatorship at that point. And so my parents wanted a different life, a better life for their children. And we emigrated to New York. Now, in New York, on the one hand, you could kind of fit in no matter who you are, because where we immigrated to was kind of a land of immigrants, a town of immigrants. Nobody spoke English as a first language. And actually, there were very few white kids too, where I moved to. It was mostly a Hispanic and Indian neighborhood. And all of these other pockets, near us. So I got an amazing chance to get to know a lot of kids from a lot of different backgrounds. And but it took me a really long time to understand the language and learn it, just like a lot of other kids. And so I remember one time starting to realize that the language was not just my only difficulty. And it was in fifth grade. I, started learning the language a little bit, and I had, a situation where it was the only other two white girls in the class wanted to see my jacket. And my friend, who was, an amazing friend who was able to sort of navigate between cultures in some ways, said, don't give them your jacket, Mira. You know what they want to do with it, don't you? And I said, no, what is that? And she said, they just want to look to see if you have a brand name in it, and then make fun of you when they realize you can't afford a brand name. And I was like, people do that? And that was my first exposure to class differences, and not realizing that you would be judged for those class differences. So along the way, as I started getting to understand all of these things, this was probably how it planted the seed for me to become a psychologist and to be interested in workplace politics. I have an interest in those areas because probably I did a lot of observing and trying to understand why certain people have power. How do they have power? How do they get to that point? What are they doing that is sort of different? And when I first had my first career, it was as a school counselor. So before I was a psychologist, I became a school counselor. I thought, okay, I now have all the education. I understand the language. I, sound like I do now. So I blended in, and I thought, okay, now I have everything I need to be automatically successful, right? Because I have the language and I have a degree.
Doesn't work that way, right?
It doesn't work that way. Just because you understand the language in a country doesn't mean you understand the culture.
Absolutely.
And there are all these underlying things that I didn't know were important, messages, the way that people interacted. And so there was one situation I remember toward the end of my counseling career where, I was a very straightforward kind of person. I wasn't very good at, not saying things straight out.
Telling people like it is, right?
Right. And so I had read something that made me wonder whether my leader was doing things ethically or not. And I wrote this long email message to her saying that I thought what she was doing was unethical because of all of these things that I read, and I'd be happy to work with her on it. She was like several levels up. And it was like the biggest political faux pas, to do something like that.
Right.
And I didn't know. I just thought I was being straightforward and helpful and honest. Well, my immediate supervisor pulled me aside the next day and she said, Mira, you did not do good. Our leader's very upset. And it was then that it just hit me like a ton of bricks that I shouldn't have done that, and that there are better ways to communicate more effectively. And I said, okay, I really want to fix this. I'm going to set up an appointment and talk with her and explain. And she said, no. Don't do that. I've fixed it. And I said, oh, thank you. How did you fix it? And she said, I told her that English was your second language and that sometimes you didn't get things.
That's terrible. Absolutely terrible.
But it's my first language now. Do you hear me? I can laugh about it now, but this was like a betrayal for me.
Yeah.
Like she took something that was personal to me that a lot of people didn't know, and used it to explain away my faux pas. And it was at that
actions. I mean, I wouldn't call it a faux pas. I mean, what's wrong with being open and honest about what you're thinking and feeling? Because if you allow people to rewrite your story, it's no longer your story.
That's right. Yeah.
And maybe there was a better way to have done it, maybe in person, because one of the things about putting it on paper, it's forever there. They have it, in email or whatever, it's forever there, but other than that, I think you did the right thing.
It was probably the right thing in all the wrong ways. Right. However, by doing that, she had basically taken all my power to ever correct, because at that point I was labeled as clueless forever. Right. I was clueless because English was my second language and I missed things. That was basically like, here's now the hat you wear as you walk around this culture, right?
So can I ask you a question about that? What did you learn from that experience? What thought became embedded in your mind this is a new behavior or practice for me?
Yeah, I learned a couple of things. Number one is what we just talked about, that it's not bad to share your concerns, but it is important to understand how to effectively share those and learn what's going on around me that I need to know about that is not just about me, right? And so I did get like an interest in workplace politics later, but honestly, honestly, at that time, I was like, I'm never, ever working for another bureaucratic hierarchical system again. I don't fit in. That's what I learned at that moment. Looking back is a different story, but that's how I felt in the moment, that I didn't fit in and I will never succeed in that way. And so what I did was I just went back to school to learn even more, like as if even more education would fix this, this situation, right? So I decided to become a psychologist, and somehow, even though I told myself I'd never end up in these situations again, I ended up working in one of what is arguably the most hierarchical bureaucratic system in the US.
Let me ask you this question. Are there organizations that are not hierarchical and bureaucratic? I mean,
it's true.
If you know one, please let me know, because I might.
I know, right? The larger it is, the more kind of, the more complex all of these things are. And the more, like there's systems upon systems, the layers and layers. And what made the difference for me, honestly, is once I started as a psychologist in this new system, I had a mentor, and he kindly, unexpectedly took me under his wing and said, let me show you what you need to know that you're missing about the culture. That happens so rarely.
Yes. To
women of color, to people at my level, to young people, that could happen. So I just recognized how lucky I was. And honestly, the moment I started understanding how to navigate better, how to understand, okay, these people have a weird relationship, don't put them in the same room together, you know, okay, this person can really get things done. And even though the policy says this, if you talk with them and develop a relationship, they can really help you understand how to work around a system that is set up to block you from doing this or doing that. That's the culture. That's like the unspoken rules of any kind of like large group, whatever setting, right?
Can I raise an issue for you?
Yeah, yeah.
So one of the things, and please don't take this any way other than the way I mean it, like I have found that when we use things like people of color, women of color, you know, children of color, we marginalize them further because it assumes that white is not a color. It makes an inference that's not really correct. And so where that came from is we have all these labels that describe people, right? And I think you know this from your work, you know, so age and race and all these different labels, and we keep piling more on top of it, right? So we have minorities, and we have underrepresented, we have marginalized, we have all of these layers we keep piling on top of people, which pushes them further down. So I refer to people by what they are. So I'm Black, somebody else might be brown or might be red or yellow or whatever they may be. I don't even know if those are legitimate terms to describe people, because in every ethnicity, there is a variety of color from the darkest dark to the lightest light. And that's even in white, you know, even in the white population. And so when we try to label people as things, we ultimately hurt them more than we help them.
Yeah.
I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to share that.
Very helpful. Yeah. I don't think that we have any of the right tools to really talk about these things, because yes, we like to lump things into categories or people into categories just to like make a point or make sense or whatever for understanding, but the categories aren't really all that useful, right? Because of the level of diversity within, you know, like among white people, right? For example, among Black people, like, so we're very ill-equipped when it comes to these things. Absolutely. And that means I'm ill-equipped as well to explain these.
We all are. We're struggling with this every day. The problem just is, if we're going to fix it, we have to start by deconstructing labels and terms, so what your friend did was put a label on you. You are a second language speaker. What does that matter? I mean,
right.
If you think about that intellectually, you are smarter than people who only speak one language, because it takes a lot to master two languages, right? So, to label you in something that's considered derogatory or negative, oh, she's a second language speaker, or English is not her primary language. The problem with labels is that they do exactly what the person intended them to do. They harm the person that gets the label.
Yeah. And really, I think what we're really getting at is who ends up having more privilege as a result of various backgrounds or identities versus others. And we all have some levels of privilege in certain areas and some not, that have held us back, right? So yes, talking about it from that perspective, I think would probably be more helpful.
Yeah. And I think your story is phenomenal. I think it's a wonderful journey. And I'd like to ask you, why did you pick psychology? Was it because some early event in your life, like you described with your jacket, or was it an eventual exploring of that discipline and saying, hey, I wanted to work here so I could help people understand how to navigate the world?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think for most people, it's a little bit of both. I think there's early childhood experiences, like I mentioned, that made me fascinated with how people worked together and how they functioned well or not well in certain environments. And as a child, I just spent an awful lot of time observing, and taking it in. And later on, though, when I became a school counselor, what I realized towards the middle to end of that career is that I had pegged myself in. I couldn't do anything besides be a school counselor if I didn't like it, with a school counseling degree. And yes, I got a license to be a counselor, but I wasn't trained well enough to do anything with that license. And so I decided, what could I go back to school to do that would be much more flexible, that will allow me to change my career several times if I wanted to, that also piqued my interest. And psychology had come up for me well before the school counseling idea. I was just afraid. I was afraid that I would not succeed. I couldn't ever even picture myself having a PhD. I thought that was just some far off, too hard, too difficult dream for other people who were smarter than me to achieve. So instead, I got the master's degree, and mainly because I saw, one person who was a close friend who got the master's degree, who went for a master's degree. And I thought, well, if he could do it, I could do it. I'm like him, and I got that. And then the PhD was my husband. He was going to go for a PhD. Well, if he could do it, I could do it. It wasn't an internal belief. I had to see someone near me or like me be able to do it, to have enough confidence to say, okay, I think I could do this.
So can I ask you a question? Where did that thought that made you think you couldn't come from? I mean, when did you learn that you were not as equal to everybody else? Why did that thought prevail in your mindset?
I think because it took so long to be academically successful, everything felt like, and I didn't know compared to other people if it was the same amount of struggle, but everything felt like a struggle. And therefore I just assumed, if this is such a struggle, I must not be smart, And
how did you overcome that? How did you get past that? What was it, just seeing other people that looked like you or had similar backgrounds? Or did you reframe how you thought about yourself and how you thought about your place in the world?
It was probably both. It was starting to see success academically, but also starting to see people around me like me with the same kind of educational success that I had do this, and thinking, okay, I could do that if they could do that, and believing that.
That's beautiful. I think that the problem is where do we learn these unhealthy thoughts that drive us to certain things, so not that it was a waste of money to get a master's degree, but something stopped you from jumping all the way to the doctorate or to whatever the next level that made sense. And the questions are, what are in our environments that contribute to the way we think and see and believe about ourselves? Like, how do we get past those places where we can succeed? And specifically for Black and brown girls, so we were told we're not scientific, we don't think logically, we're more emotional. So, stay away from STEM. And so that's why STEM is struggling to catch up with women and Black and brown and other ethnicities to come in, because we've been told so long that you're not that good. And admittedly, my experience is the same almost as yours, so when I was born in New York, but I was raised in South Carolina. And I was told throughout my high school, my middle school, I was not that smart. I was not. And I should go and get pregnant and, stay in South Carolina and, just be happy that I managed to finish high school. And I believe that. And even to this day, I am hampered by that because I don't mess with math at all. I do not. Statistically, I'm brilliant, but algebra, calculus, even some of the basics of mathematics still are a struggle to me, because I believe, and I still believe, that I'm not mathematically smart. My husband and my son are mathematic geniuses. I mean, literally, it just rolls right off their brains. They get it in a minute. We're in the store and it says 50% off. Honey, how much does this thing cost? So tell me this. So as a woman, I find that is a fascinating thing, that we believe what people tell us so much that it affects the outcomes of our lives. Because, when I go to a restaurant, I know how much 15, 18, 20, 22% is. So how come I don't know how much 50% is off of something like that? And I'm really simplifying it, but you get my point, right? You see where I'm going.
Absolutely. It is probably at the crux of so much of our success is us, number one, believing the messages that we hear all around us about our potential. And two, actually having somebody, just one person in our lives that says, I believe in you. Absolutely. I know you can do this.
Absolutely. And that's the point right there. So I'm going to ask you this question. Where do we find that one person? And I'm going to ask you this from three perspectives. Where do we find it as a Black person? Where do we find it as a woman? Where do we find it as LGBTQ? Where do we find it if we subscribe to a particular religion? Where do we find that person that shows up for us? Because one of the things that and I get criticized for this a lot, I don't believe in mentors, because mentor is just someone who's going to give you some advice, just shuffle you on down the road. But an advocate, a person who is in your corner, fighting for you, making a phone call, like, I think you really should give Dr. Brancu a chance. I think you should give people an opportunity and stand with them as they're going through that journey. Because the young girl I was telling you about in the coding program had no one that believed in her. So she believed the stories that she was told. She believed she wasn't ever going to code. And today she is a programmer that works for one of the top 10 technical companies in the world, but somehow or another, someone had convinced her she wasn't that smart. I'm old now, so I'm past the point of people convincing me or not convincing me of something. I believe what I believe about myself, and I accept that. But just think of what I could have been if someone would have believed in me and pointed me in the right direction.
Yeah. So I'm gonna flip your question around just a little. You ask where to find them, which puts the onus on the person who hasn't been, they have to like search and search and search. That's not fair, right? So my question is, why aren't more people who have that ability to provide someone else with the advocacy and sponsorship they need, stepping up and just doing it? I think if every single one of us just did it for one person, that would make a difference. And that's, that's how I try to go about life, because it was so important and made such a difference to me that I look around me and I say, who needs me? Who needs me to step up and advocate or sponsor or connect them with so-and-so, or, give them a little bit of advice and then, share some resources or whatever. And I just think we need more of that.
I think your point is a good one, but I think that think about your journey from, there were a ton of people that came into your life, whether they were coworkers, classmates, whatever they were. And in a lot of cases, and this is inherently what's wrong with humanity as a whole, we care so much about self, that sharing the space, giving someone else an opportunity they may exceed us. So we're worried about that. They may challenge us. We're worried about that. We can't retort back to whatever it is that they've said or done. Or we are in some way in conflict with ourselves, right? We are not sure of who we are as a person, because what if I help her and it goes wrong? Or what if I make a phone call and she turns out to be a bust? So all of these things are constantly churning through us. So it takes, like you and I just met, it will take time for us to confide and trust each other to help us in whatever journey we're going. It doesn't happen automatically. And then you don't know for sure whether the person is legitimately who they say they are. So the person that's searching for that advocate and the person that can provide that advocacy are all in conflict with each other, with themselves, with the world around them. And so circumstances doesn't always allow others to come in and help, because my favorite one, and so I have a degree in psychology too. My favorite one is I don't want to be blamed, right? I don't want to be the person that caused this to happen to you. So I am going to stay back and stay neutral. The problem with that is that if you take the onus of blame on, if I fail, it's not your fault, So if you reach out to me and say, Rochelle, let's go do X, Y, and Z, and we go, and I don't hold up my half of the bargain, you actually own my shortcoming. We have to flip that around and say, Rochelle, I've made phone calls from you, I've written letters, I've gone to all these different lengths, and you haven't taken advantage of these opportunities. You're going to have to prove to me that you're willing to step up. I'm not going to take responsibility for your failure or your shortcoming. You have to own your shortcoming. So in a lot of ways, we have to look for our mentors and our advocates and our coaches and whoever else we have in our lives, just like we look for our spouses and our, friends and whatever. You have to search it out, and you don't marry the first guy you meet or girl you meet. You don't become best friends with the first person you meet. It takes time to go that way. And most of us don't make that investment in each other of time, right? So I'm going to give you, 3 years of my life to help you develop your career or whatever it is. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. And I'll add to that, because I think what you're getting at, which is so important, is it's a trusting relationship, right? You're developing a trusting relationship, which takes time and effort on both parts. And the best kind is mutually beneficial. I learn and I grow just as much from the people I support as they might for me, sometimes more, So it also touches on the fact that when people think about mentors or sponsors, advocates, they think, how do I find that one? Right. When in fact, number one, it's not fair to lean on just one person for every single need you have. Right. And that one person couldn't possibly meet all your needs. And so developing, more trusting relationships, building your network, getting to know people, and assessing over time, how much can I trust them with this? How much can I trust them with this? There's going to be some people that you meet that are going to be really great at helping you become a better writer, but will never help you find a job. Right. There's going to be other people who will be great at helping you network, but could never really, help you make decisions about your career or whatever. So the more you can sort of fill your life, you know, in the same way that you did it as a child, right? As a child, you might have leaned on this one adult, you know, as the fun one, and this one adult as the nurturing one, and this one friend as the one who always got your back, and this auntie and this grandma for this, right? Like we leaned on different people for different things and learned to trust them with certain things. And it's the same exact in our adult lives. We just kind of forget that sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think that what's really interesting about where we are in this particular space and time, the world just seems to be in pure chaos. It just seems to be tumbling around, lost without direction anymore. You know, we've got this pandemic, this raging. People are going out in malls and stores and schools and shooting at people and killing people. I mean, like, what has happened to us? What have we lost? And I think that in some way, we've lost our center. We've lost our ability to focus on what's in front of us and then each other. You know, there's a quote that says that I am better because I make somebody else better, because I help somebody else achieve their goal. And in reality, if we understood that by helping someone, however you help them, you know, whether you advise them, whether you explain how a process works or whatever it is, we are better because of that, because the more good you put in the universe, the more the universe gives back to you. And I think that we have lost track of that, you know, that it's important that we do this. How do I get to decide how your life becomes? Because I have one, I don't think that's fair. So I can kill you and take your life. I can disrupt your family, or I can, you know, do whatever it is and not really think about what the consequences of that is. And I think that that's what we have lost, is our understanding of what impacts we have on each other and in the world. So we see, and there are a lot of people who don't think there's an issue with the climate, but I mean, you've got to either have a mask on or be blind or deaf or something to not recognize that something is going on in our climate. I mean, we have warmer summers, cooler winters, you know, and, you know, all kinds of other variations to the extreme has to be in the climate, but we seem to be in denial about that. And we don't want to take our responsibility for what we have done to this planet that was given to us as a pure, you know, habitat that has been successful for us to this date, but slowly by capitalism and other things, we're destroying what was given to us that was absolutely perfect. So I think that that's a process that we've got to find our way through and get to the other side and see that it's important to do something for others.
Yeah. Let me ask you, as I'm hearing this, I'm wondering, do you think that this is our very poor human way of gaining power when we feel more and more powerless?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you know, what is it to kill someone if not power? What is it to rape someone if not power? What is it not to degrade or not promote or advocate for someone if not power? Because as I said earlier, there's a part of us that's so ingrained with self, my problems, how I see myself, how I see my situation. You know, there's a song, and I talk about it very often. There's a rap song, it's several years old, and the guy says, you know, if I don't have food to feed my children, if I don't have some place to stay, I'm going to take yours. And if you just, you know, dissect that one statement, it's a feeling about how I feel in regards to what you feel. So how did you get yours? Well, maybe I didn't have the same opportunities to get what you have. Maybe I don't have those same opportunities, but it still doesn't entitle me to go take yours or to discombobulate your life. In reality, what I have to do is and believe in me, believe and simply believe that I can. And so many people do not believe that they can. And I'm not talking about people who go to extreme, to violence or whatever, but I'm talking about just regular, everyday people who do not believe in themselves and believe that they can, whatever it is that they believe they can try to do. And there is no perfect walk in this process. You aren't going to wake up one day from kindergarten and be the CEO or whatever of a company. It's going to be struggles and disappointments and setbacks, but you get up and you keep pushing forward until you get what your goal is. And if you don't believe that, you can't, because, you know, as you and I both said earlier, you know, there are people who reminded us that we aren't equal. We aren't as good. We aren't as whatever. And that's really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like part of what you're saying is the ultimate source of power is when we actually believe in ourselves and we make it happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you don't, I am everybody's perfect example. And I don't care what woman, a minority, disability, whatever it is, I am all of those things. And every step I have taken forward, I've taken at least 5 or 6 backwards, but I keep going because I don't believe in what they tell me about myself. I'm not, inferior. I'm not less than. I'm not stupid. I am the example that everybody should be able to point. So if you see that Black woman over there, I can. And I can because I came from nothing. I mean, food insecure, hungry, not believing anything good about myself, and yet still, when I was 19, I was raped. I had all kinds of things happen to me in my life. And I'm still here. And I am better for each of those experiences, including being raped, because in reality, it took me to realize that although that person took something from me, they didn't take me. I still exist. I still am who I am. And I can either let that thing defeat me or I can overcome it, And so that's the thing that we have to keep reiterating to people, especially to younger people, when people are vulnerable to, suicide and drug addiction and all of these other things. It is a lack of self-understanding and awareness. And if you do not have that, you fall victim to what society throws at you. So society throws, you can't, you won't, you will not, whatever you buy into that, you fall victim to it. So it's so easy to get lost in things that meditate our pain. What is it that can make me not feel this way? So if I take someone's life, if I do this, if I do that, whatever it is, instead of recognizing that all the power in the world exists with you. If you accept what people give you, then you give yourself to them. If you believe in yourself and what you can do, you achieve. But it's a fight. Nothing about this is going to be easy. I tell my son that I have a 23-year-old son, and he's getting ready to graduate from college. He was sick for a while, so he was out of school for a while, but he's getting ready to graduate from college, and he can't wait to move out and get his own place. And wait a year or two and that shock hits you of what it means to be an adult and on your own. When life throws these right and left jabs at you that knock you out, you got to get back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's lucky because I'm sure you're building him up really well with all of these messages.
All the time. I spend, one of the things that I do in my company, I have a branding piece that we offer to individuals who are struggling to find their way. So we do a little branding thing, like companies like Apple or Verizon or whoever it is has this big old red check, or Apple has an apple with, the little leaf. That's a brand, but you are too. You are a brand, and you have to believe in yourself as meticulously and as steadfast as does these companies. They are, no matter how many things happen to them, they get sued, they get knocked down, whatever it is, they get back up and they come right back to the market with the message that reaffirms who they are. We have to believe that about ourselves, that we are a brand and we are as valuable to that company as that company is to us. And there is no in between. We go into a job interview or situation and we're looking forward to them offering us a job. Well, you need to change that story and say, well, let's change it this way. You are as great to have me as I am to have you. And I bring as much to the table as you do. If you think money is the thing that makes you different, I'm afraid you misunderstood this process, because that's just a tool. It's not the thing. The thing is what you contribute to that organization and how their culture is formed and how they behave in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like through your branding process, you actually help them work through quite some deep stuff.
Absolutely. I try my
to get
best
to the point where they own their power and own who they are and come in confidently to career opportunities.
Self-introspection, not just career, but everything. Self-introspection. What do you see about yourself? How do you see yourself? Who are you? Do you speak up? Do you speak up for others? Do you fight for something you believe in? Do you get beat down when people tell you no, or you can't, or you're not that good, or whatever it is? If you fall victim to that, then you are susceptible to everything. If you believe, and simply my message in branding is just believing in yourself to the highest extent you possibly can and going from that forward. And that doesn't mean you become mean or maniacal or narcissistic or any of that stuff. It means that you become confident no matter what life throws at you, you keep pushing forward.
Yeah. And I'll add one last thing, which is that is a muscle that you build. And we start off with very weak muscles, and that's okay. But like any muscle, it just takes time and persistence, and every little, muscle fiber that you break down and feel a little sore the next day will build you up. And one quick example is I write for Psychology Today on women's leadership. And in the beginning, when I started, I would get some really like nasty things about, from people who don't believe women should be leaders, or why am I shoving leadership down women's throats, or all kinds of things like that. And it would send me down into a deep, dark 2-week spiral. Why am I doing this? What's the point? I'm no good at this. I clearly am not cut out for this. Like all the negative, horrible things we tell ourselves when somebody tries to knock us down. And then I got back up. Okay, I'm going to try again. And the next time it took me 5 days to get back up. And the next time it took me 3 days to get back up. I'm still not at like 0 days, but it clearly was building a muscle by trying again, by not giving up, by saying, not everybody is saying this to me, just right. Some people. Other people are saying, I appreciate what you're writing, and trying to sort of keep the balance there and not hear, only the negative voices and that kind of thing. And that's all like muscle building. It's just about building your resiliency and self-confidence muscle.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. We have a couple of minutes left. I want to leave the time to you if there's something you want to contribute that we haven't discussed, or something else. Is there something else you want to add?
I also have a business, and I can share very quickly. I do some leadership and team development and organizational politics. I have a Millennials Guide to Workplace Politics book that is on sale, 40% right now on Amazon if you want to take a look. And it has basically everything that I learned. I just wanted to make it as accessible as possible. So if you want to look that up, look it up. And otherwise, I'm on www.brancuassociates.com if you're curious about what I do, or on LinkedIn. You can find me there too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Brancu. This is very, very helpful. I think it will be very valuable to people who get to hear our discussion. And I'd like to invite you to come back and talk to us again, to share more and to talk a little bit more about your business and what your hopes are for that, and how we can help you with that as well.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I love what you're doing, and keep going.
Absolutely. As long as there's breath, I will keep going. Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate your time very much. I will send you a link as soon as this video converts. Please watch it and let me know if I may upload it.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week and holiday, and be safe.
And if you're cutting off the time here, tell me about your business and how I can support you.
So my company is NASIC, and it's just Newton Advocacy and Strategic Inclusion and Tolerance Consulting. And what we do is we try to help people navigate that thing. Many of the things that you say you do, we cross. So we do team management, we do, environmental and cultural changes within organizations. We help individuals find that elusive thing that they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And we do that for anyone who comes to us. We are, in the space of inclusion, because a lot of people focus on diversity, and diversity just means different, but inclusion means a seat at the table, a voice in the conversation, and feeling like you have a place in the process. And that may even be a place in your own life. So are you struggling with your own life to navigate things? Are you struggling in your relationships? Whatever it is, finding you helps you navigate all the other things. And that's what we do. So, we are always thinking of how to do better in the world and make the world a better place. And I have one simple mission, and that's just to make the world better, one person at a time.
Love it. NASIC.
Yep. I'll send you some information, and you send me yours, and send me the information about the book. And I'll put all of that in the YouTube channel so people can go find it. And how long is the discount?
It's until December 23rd.
Okay, so I'll try to put that in there as well so that
Okay.
people can see that and the name of the book and all that other stuff. And
Okay.
if you have a publisher, please share it with me, because I have been searching for one for a minute now and I haven't been able to find one. So
I will.
absolutely.
I will.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Dr. Brancu. I really
Thanks.
appreciate your time. Be well.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.